how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. In today's tutorial, I'm teaching you how to make this off-the-shoulder dress with the tie belt. I have a similar style top I made recently, but I decided to make a dress version as well so you know how to make both. I really hope you enjoy this tutorial. It's going to be fairly easy to make, and if you do like it, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more, and let's go ahead and get sewing. You'll need at least 1.5 yards of a lightweight, non-stretch fabric for this project. And although the name of my fabric was called Silky Prince Stretch Chiffon, it basically had no stretch to it at all, so the instructions are for light, non-stretch fabrics. You'll also need enough 1/4-inch elastic to wrap around your shoulders and a basic tank top to use as a template. To begin, go about halfway up the curve of the armholes and fold the portion above this point down to create a straight edge for the off-shoulder style. Then fold the tank top in half down the center, and this is our template. Fold a portion of your fabric over a bit wider than the tank top, then lay and pin the top down so that it's about 2 inches away from the fold of the fabric. We need that extra room to get the dress on and off easily since we're using a non-stretch fabric. Cut 1 inch above the top edge to add room for the elastic, and then cut a 1/2 inch larger than the armhole to add hem allowance. Cut a 1/2 inch wider at the top of the side and angle your cutting to get a few inches wider as you go down to create the loose, flowy effect of the dress. And finally, cut the bottom edge 1.5 inches longer than your preferred dress length to add elastic and hem allowance. Remove the tank top and unfold the fabric, and you'll have one dress piece cut out, which you'll use to cut a second dress piece. Lay them with the correct sides facing together and pin and sew along the sides using a straight stitch and a 1/2 inch seam allowance on all seams unless I mention otherwise. Luckily, my fabric doesn't fray, but if yours does, trim the seam allowances with pinking shears to help prevent fraying. Iron the seam allowances open following the heat instructions for your fabric, then open up the dress so the wrong side of the fabric is facing up and you can see the full U shape of one armhole. There's 2 options for hemming the armhole. The first, which I do, is to fold the raw edge over a 1/4 inch once, then fold it again another 1/4 inch and pin it into place, repeating this process along the entire armhole. Some non-stretch fabrics are easy to fold around curves, but this one was more difficult and I wound up with a couple tiny puckers at the underarm. The armholes won't be seen, so it didn't bother me, but if your fabric is also difficult, the second option is to wrap and pin a double fold bias tape around the armhole to cover up the raw edge. Sew around the armhole to secure the hem or the bias tape, taking your time as you go around the curves, and you can see here the couple puckers where the fabric wouldn't lay flat. Hem the other armhole too, and then iron both armholes so the edges lay neatly. To make the panel that goes around the dress, measure your shoulders. Mine are 45 inches. We have to add room to this number to give the panel the flowy gathered effect, so add anywhere from 10 to 20 inches. In my recent off-shoulder top video, I added 10 inches, but I wanted this panel to be a little flowier, so I added 14 inches. Then divide your number by 2. I got 29.5. Cut 2 rectangles that measure the number you just calculated by 12 inches, or if you want the panel to hit higher or lower on your arms, you can adjust that second number. Lay them with the correct sides facing and pin and sew along the sides, then iron the seam allowances open and turn the panel inside out. Hem the bottom edge by double folding it a 1/4 inch at a time and pinning it into place around the entire bottom edge and sew to secure the hem. Turn it right side out and measure along the top raw edge to find the center. Use straight pins to mark this center point both on the front and back of the panel. Measure along the dress's top edge and mark its center front and center back as well. With both pieces right side out, wrap the panel around the dress and line up the center points. Match up and pin the center points on the front of the dress and panel together, and then work your way outward to pin the rest of the front of the dress to the panel. Pin the center backs of both pieces together as well, and again work your way outward to pin the rest of the back together. Sew across the pinned sections with a 1/4 inch seam allowance to join the pieces, and turn the dress inside out. To make a casing for the elastic along the top edge, fold the fabrics over a 1/2 inch, then fold them again another 1/2 inch and pin them into place. Continue double folding a 1/2 inch at a time and pin frequently until the entire top edge is double folded. Sew around the top edge to create the casing, but leave a couple inch gap unsewn to feed the elastic into, and keep your stitches close to the edge that's folded where I'm pointing to, so you leave room for the 1/4 inch elastic to fit through. When you get back near where you started sewing, don't forget to stop and leave that gap. Next, wrap your elastic around your shoulders, stretching it slightly so it's snug but not tight, and cut it a 1/2 inch larger than the size you need. Hook a safety pin on one end and feed it in through the opening, being careful not to twist the elastic as you push it. I ran into a problem where I couldn't push the pin any further than this point where the front of the dress ended, so I started over, fed it in through a different layer of fabric, and didn't have a problem. Because we folded 2 layers of fabric on the front and back and just one on the sides, sometimes the safety pin can go through the wrong layer and get stuck, so you may need to restart and push it through a different path. And eventually you'll pull it back through the other side. Remove the pin and lay the 2 ends of elastic on top of each other, then sew back and forth several times with a zigzag stitch to secure them. Tug on the fabric to get the elastic to lay flat inside, and sew to close up the opening. Make sure the fabric is gathered evenly around the top, and then sew a couple of stitches over the elastic on both side seams to keep it from twisting. While it's inside out, double fold and sew the bottom edge to hem it. To make the belt, cut a rectangle that measures these dimensions. Mine is 57 inches. Fold it in half with correct sides facing and press the fabric lightly if needed to help it stay. Trim the edge so it's angled into a point. Pin it together all the way across the length of the belt and trim the opposite edge at an angle too. Sew one angled edge and side with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, stopping a couple inches from the center, and then sew the other angled edge and side, stopping so you leave a small gap unsewn. Use the end of a paintbrush or chopstick to turn the belt right side out, starting at each edge and pushing the fabric through the center gap. Iron the belt to flatten it out, and then to finish it, sew right along the edge on all sides to top stitch it, which adds a really nice finished detail to the belt. Finally, tie it around the dress to define your waist and you're all done. Thanks so much for watching this project. And let's go ahead and get sewing. Man, first try, I nailed it. I keep messing up. This is a dress, not a top. My bad. Dress. Dang it. Rewind.